Lo and behold, here we are. Faith Works Live. It is a glorious day. It's just beautiful days all around here. This is one of my favorite times of year in this in my home, which is Iowa. You get to smell the flowers blooming. You hear the birds singing. Usually, neighbors are out cutting their grass at any time of the day or night. It doesn't matter that they just cut it yesterday. The grass is growing, and so it needs a cutting. It's one of those missions of especially our fine folks in the grandfatherly crowd. I just think that's their mission between dads and grandpas. Thank you for standing on that wall for us and making sure the grass is neatly trimmed and the lawn is perfectly edged. Not my skill set, so I'm glad that you have that. It is always a joy to talk about life and serious happenings, exciting happenings in our day. I've always said we have been created for just such a time as this. I believe that applies here, and many of us have been praying and working tirelessly for a time when Roe v. Wade would be on the dust heap of history, when it would be old news tossed out, like the garbage that it was, and that we can start rebuilding a culture of life here in not only in our state and the nation, across the world. So nothing less than life and death at stake, as we've always known, if you've been passionate about this issue. And we're finally right there at that precipice of a whole new chapter. But as I've been saying, the end of Roe is just the beginning of a new chapter when it comes to protecting life. Because now the way that it looks is that the national battle, the national war, has become 50 different battles. So where do we go from here? And there's no one better equipped to talk about this than our friend and just an excellent ambassador for life, Maggie DeWitte from Pulse for Life, or Pulse Life Advocates, formerly Iowans for Life. Pulse Life Advocates is the new name for a new generation. So much new going on. And Maggie, you are at the forefront of this. Welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure to talk with you and talk about life.
Well, and you're so good at it. So that's why I love to talk with you. I always leave encouraged every time we get a chance to talk. So I appreciate it. And you've been watching this obviously more closely than probably anybody else. So what are you seeing right now? We're still presuming at the time that we're talking that the draft decision that we've seen from Justice Alito will be finalized in somewhat that same form. So we kind of are going off of that expectation. Do you see anything else that might lead you to believe that there's been any change, or is this basically the direction that we're going to go?
Well, I sure hope so, and I sure pray that that's the case. I think what we saw was an unprecedented situation in the history of the U.S. Supreme Court, that a draft decision was leaked in this manner. And of course, it would be on this monumental issue, life and death, abortion, that we would have this unprecedented move. And it's stunning to me that that this would happen. And to me, it seems like the primary motive was intimidation of our U.S. justices. And so I think that if I were a justice and seeing this and seeing kind of the dignity of the court being, tossed aside by these leaks, that would be even more emboldening them to stick with what they had, originally done, instead of, bowing to this intimidation that surely was the reason to, create an outcry in the American public, to the point where these justices, needed to fear for their lives and had to undergo, safety measures, which is just unbelievable. And I think to a large degree, in the last few weeks, we've seen just a glimpse of what it is going to be like and how unhinged the pro-abortion culture is, and how angry they are, how absolutely angry they are at the thought that we would say, no, we are no longer going to allow on a federal level the killing of our unborn children in the womb.
Yeah, I've been
even saying that is just crazy to me.
I've been impressed with that as well, just the all out rage. And I mean, this isn't the first time I've seen it. I know you're well acquainted with what motivates the other side. I hate to draw such broad brush strokes. I know there are people who are just deceived, who are unaware, or who are, emotionally manipulated, that believe that there's no other option, for example, or we believe these lies that we've told, especially in particular women and vulnerable women at that, your dreams depend on the death of your child, basically, that's the only option for you, which was always a lie. But for many years, we've believed it. And so I know there are people like that would be concerned about, what we're seeing now, but I don't count them among the crazy activists that are on the street, basically pulling apart baby dolls in effigy, for example, or literally threatening Supreme Court justices with death. I mean, if that doesn't tell you where the two sides, if you look at the extremes on the two sides, I'm not sure if you want to be on the extreme, maybe you're uncomfortable with the people that are praying outside Planned Parenthood, but I would far rather be on that side. Like, that's what that extreme side looks like. Come on over. It's actually kind of fun. You're praying, for life, protecting life, encouraging adoption, encouraging, helping support pregnant moms and young families. That's the extreme on one side. And the other extreme is, screaming and wailing and gnashing their teeth and threatening the lives of the Supreme Court justices because of the decision they disagree with. I think that offers a pretty stark comparison right there.
Absolutely. I mean, it is the side of violence. I mean, abortion is violence, and their supporters are acting in violence and inciting violence in some cases. And so I think that hopefully is going to open people's eyes to what has been happening underneath their noses for nearly 50 years. To see the stark contrast. And you're right, because our extreme, if you even want to call that, is prayerful presence in front of these clinics in an attempt to help these women, let them know they don't have to do what they're going to go in there and do. There are other options. And so, I'm just praying that the draft that was leaked is the final, and that we can then move on. And I do think it's appropriate just to take a step and celebrate that. And I'm very excited and hopeful that we can get to that point where we can relish in the fact that nearly 50 years has gone by, and now we're finally closing that chapter on a decision that should never have happened in our country and was a horrible piece of law. And we can close that book and really move forward with how we as a society can create a culture of life.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's go there next then, because that's the big question. Everyone's wondering, well, what happens next? And some people are, as we mentioned, are afraid and angry and, muttering threats of violence. And we pray that, God foils each and every attempt, if any are made, against more life and more destruction, because that's the enemy. That's the enemy talking and thrashing about because he knows he's losing. But there have been distinct, I would say, the effort that we need to make now as pro-lifers is to be very well equipped to make the case for life. Clearly put, and also a good book, by the way, The Case for Life. What we can do is to be so ready to give an answer. And a lot of us say, yes, I am ready. Put me in, coach. Like, I've been waiting, waiting to have all these discussions. Now people are finally going to ask these questions. Yes, now is the time. And there are other people that maybe aren't don't feel at least quite as well equipped. Maybe they're excited to see this turn of events, but they're thinking, gosh, I've never really talked with anyone about this. Maybe, it's going to be a little awkward. I don't really know. Clearly my neighbor, I just saw what they posted on Instagram, and they disagree with me. And I had no idea that they, felt strongly about abortion. I didn't realize we disagreed on this. What is a way that I can approach them in a caring way, that I've got kind of my ducks in a row, that I've got my words in order so that I can give the defense for what I believe. And the pro-choice caucus is already they're ready. They're boning up on all these new terms. They've got new language in store. But I just wanted to let people know that there is a very helpful resource that you guys have, and they can find at pulseforlife.org. Could you tell us about that?
Sure. So our efforts are all about education. And so we want to equip people to have these conversations, because the biggest problem with abortion is that no one's talking about it. That's really where it starts, is you do have to have the conversation. And I think with this Roe decision coming down the pike, it is going to finally put us in a situation where we can have these discussions and use it as an opportunity to change hearts and minds, which is really all we're supposed to be doing, right? And so we want to equip people to do that. So we put together an apologetics toolkit. So we have all of the common arguments that you're going to hear, all of the ones that they keep pushing and pushing and pushing. It's not a baby. Well, what about rape? Well, what about disabilities? Well, what about this or what about that? And we give you concise answers on how to tackle that. And then we also did those in social media videos. So we wanted to have both the flashcard versions and less than a minute videos tackling those issues to equip everyone to start having those conversations about abortion, because we need to have those talks. Otherwise, how are we going to engage in changing this culture if we're not willing to have a conversation with our family and friends and our neighbors?
Well, and I think that's one good thing about the way that this happened, is that it was so unexpected and so strange, so unprecedented, that it forced the entire conversation before something had occurred. So it wasn't as though the decision had been imposed. Now everyone's kind of thinking about it. It's out in the water. And I don't know if this broke the ice a little bit compared to how it could have happened. I'm not sure. But I do know that now people who maybe hadn't had a well-formulated opinion or thoughts about abortion, just kind of, we tend to be a little bit more reactive until people press us, most people. And now folks are being pressed. It's being put out into the forefront of our minds. So we are thinking about it. Let's think well about it. Let's speak well about it. And the opportunity to change those minds, I think, is right here, which is wonderful. That is maybe an unintended consequence of whoever leaked this. So I guess, thank you. But I do see that the other side is they are at the forefront of marketing. And they, like, devil knows how to market, because he's had lots of practice at marketing lies. And it's interesting now, because the preferred term used to be pro-choice. They even called themselves that. The Democratic caucus was the pro-choice caucus. But one of the things that they're saying now in the new marketing is that choice is a no-no. We're not supposed to talk about it as a choice anymore. And I just find that kind of interesting. I'm not sure what they're going to call it now, but they say now the helpful language is decision. So this is the official marketing material or messaging materials that were sent out to all the House Democrats. So now you're starting to notice these little changes in language. So instead of saying choice, they say decision. Talk about a decision, because people recognize, they're clued into the fact that pro-choice really means pro-abortion. So because we've caught on to that now, they're saying decision. They're also not supposed to talk about abortion as being safe, legal, and rare anymore. That was kind of the Hillary Clinton talking point. Well, I guess those days are gone. They're supposed to say safe, legal, and accessible, because there should be nothing rare about abortion if it's not the killing of a child. Like, they're trying to remove all of that, the moral compunction and component when it comes to the preborn child. Instead of unwanted pregnancy, which is, a horrible term that we've heard and fought against for many years, we talk about an unexpected pregnancy. Well, there's a lot of things that are unexpected in this life. That doesn't mean that you get to kill them. It doesn't mean you get to eliminate them, right? Your neighbor could show up unexpected with a plate of cookies, but that doesn't mean that that's a bad thing, like, all things considered. They also say that we're not supposed to talk about conscience clauses or protections for doctors, for nurses and medical staff. Instead, they're framing it as a refusal of care or a denial of care, because doctors and nurses don't have the right to conscientious protection. They don't have a say in any of this. They should be forced to participate in abortion or administer abortifacients or something like that, because all that matters is this abortion procedure happens. And this one was interesting too. They are acknowledging that the idea of back alley abortions and the coat hanger images, that's literally what they're saying, which has always been heinous, and has always preyed, it's not true, but it has also preyed on all the worst fears of violence against women's bodies. I mean, can you imagine that a more violent image than that? Instead, they're going to talk about criminalizing healthcare, because that's all that abortion is to them. They're completely eliminating, which is probably smart from their perspective, eliminating any consideration of the child, right? Of what or whom the woman is pregnant with. It's a pregnancy that can then be ended. It's not a choice anymore. It's a decision, and we're not allowed to have any conscientious feelings about it or compunctions about it whatsoever. It should be between a woman and her doctor, unless that doctor disagrees, in which he or she should be forced to participate in something that they shouldn't have any moral problems with anyway, because it's just a procedure. It's not really a child. All right. So having unpacked all of that complete and utter nonsense, this is what we're going to be up against. So I think it's good for us to be prepared. Did any of this take you by surprise, or this kind of, has it been trending this way for a while?
You know, it didn't take me by surprise, because they have continued to evolve to find new and innovative ways to kill our unborn children, like through the mail now, but also to sanitize and completely change the language that's used around this, to completely take out what is actually happening. Like you said, whether they say choice or decision, the logical question is decision to do what? What are you doing? And that's the conversation that no one wants to have, is what is happening? What happens in an abortion procedure? Do you know? Can you explain to me what happens in a D&C or a D&E abortion? And then do you know what the results of that are? Have you seen a baby that has been torn to shreds? I mean, those are the kinds of things that they stop at the decision and choice and healthcare, to not look at what the consequences are and what that effect is on those women, which we know is lifelong and something that they'll struggle with for the rest of their lives until even after they get their healing. It's still a constant struggle, because they were lied to. They were lied to. And Planned Parenthood has done a masterful job, and the abortion industry in general, at marketing their death. And people are buying it hook, line, and sinker. And people are, especially the young women, they have so preyed in on them. They don't know that there are life-affirming pregnancy centers out there that could help them, because all they know is Planned Parenthood. And so now, thinking about a post-Roe, here's our opportunity. Here is our chance to finally let these people know, who are continuing to lament and say, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? Women's health care is going to be taken away from us now. No, we have been beating this drum. And now we're going to actually show you. Here are the centers, 40 plus here in Iowa alone. I think 2,700 across the country, that have been providing care for women. So see us now. We have been helping women this whole time. Now you can maybe open your eyes and see we don't need this killing industry. Yeah. We've got people who have stepped up and have been stepping up for years and years, and actually helping women in crisis and giving them everything they need without telling them that the only way they can get ahead And the only option for them is to kill their unborn child.
Mhm. Yeah, and I'm watching the debates framed on both sides, and I have always believed that the pro-life position is the only one that makes sense, whether you're coming at it from a faith perspective or just purely from a biological standpoint. It doesn't make sense for the perpetuation of your species not to protect your own children, or to deny that the preborn children are anything other than human. And I guess I can appreciate the honesty of the activists that are out there saying, I know that we're talking about a new life. I know that we're talking about a baby. I just think that my whatever I want matters more, which is kind of horrifying to think about, to take to its logical conclusion. But I do think we're going to have to be prepared to face that level of honesty. That's not the way all these conversations tend to go. But as I've had discussions with people that are just frankly that honest, and they say, yes, I understand. And I still think that we should be allowed to kill instead of protect. I don't believe that those children deserve full legal protection. So those are the types of conversations we have to pray around. I think an awful lot of this has to be led by prayer. And I know that you agree that that's a huge component here. And what are some other ways that we can be prepared as we're looking specifically at our state of Iowa? And you are instrumental in so many efforts, legislative efforts, legal efforts to protect life here in Iowa. If and when the decision comes down, where do we stand in Iowa, and what would be the next steps moving forward to protect life? Because just because Roe fails as it should have long ago, what happens next?
Right. So that is the question that's really going to be interesting to see how it comes down across the country, because when Roe is overturned, abortion law goes back to the states. And so depending on where you are, you may have solid protections for your unborn. And in other states, it may not change at all, because they have very liberal laws on the books, like California and New York and a lot of the East Coast states who, are permitting abortion up to the day of birth and even beyond. And we have about 24 states that have what's called a trigger bill or trigger laws, that upon the fall of Roe, they will also outlaw abortion in their state. I was not one of those, unfortunately, and we've talked many times on this show about the 2018 ruling that declared a fundamental right to abortion in our Iowa Constitution. And we've been, really discussing about the constitutional amendment, the Protect Life Amendment, and we have gotten that passed last session. We're not able to pass it this session. It's got to be the next session. And then it has to go before a vote of the people. And that's the way to one avenue, which we feel is the surest avenue in undoing what that ruling did in 2018. But we do have another thing that's happening, is not last legislative session, the session before, in the final hours of the session, they passed a 24-hour waiting period before obtaining an abortion. Well, that's made it through the court system here in Iowa, and we heard oral arguments a couple months ago, and we are awaiting that ruling in June, as well as we're waiting for the Roe decision. And that has the potential, if it would go our way, and it potentially could, because we have a newly constituted Iowa Supreme Court as well. So there is a chance that they could say, not only is the 24-hour bill constitutional, but we are going to reverse our 2018 ruling. And if they would do that, then we would have reversed our 2018 ruling of fundamental right to abortion. And so now we could finally implement some restrictions. Now, right now we have our 20-week. So that is still on the books and still activated. So you cannot have an abortion after 20 weeks in Iowa. We also have a parental notification, not a parental consent, but a parental notification. So those are the two main laws that we have in Iowa regarding abortion. But if we're able to undo this fundamental right, there is also discussion about whether we would then be able to enact our heartbeat bill that was passed, because it's still a bill that was signed. It was still a law that was signed by Governor Reynolds. It just never was enacted because of this 2018 ruling. So there's been a lot of talk about being able to reenact the heartbeat bill, which would provide, some of the strictest restrictions we can, short of life at conception, or completely outline abortion altogether, which I would hope that those would be discussions we would have too.
Mm-hmm.
But right now, we're sort of waiting to see what this happens in June with the 24-hour case. And that will tell us what we need to do next based on the outcome of that.
Well, and I know there will be and should be discussions about strategy. I hope we can all be united in the same goal, which is, the end of Roe is great and all that, but, now we need to actually protect life and make sure that here, and, we can speak for our state and others in their states as well. This has broken up, again, the major cultural war of our time onto 50 different fronts. And so there'll be different answers on this, but hopefully pro-lifers across the country, and in particular here in our state, which I know we've made great strides in coming together in unity around that common goal to say that, yes, we need to protect all life. Every innocent life is going to be is a person worthy of protection here in our state, and that we won't stop until we reach that goal. Now there are some steps along the way in order to make sure that that can happen. So we'll be praying over the outcome of these Supreme Court cases, and be watching that vigilantly. I do find it interesting that if the Iowa Supreme Court were to reinstate or I guess to vacate or to undo, to say that was a bad decision, we need to redo. Just forget we said that. Then it seems to me that the heartbeat law would be on the books and would have the full force of law, and nobody could really gainsay that. I'm not a lawyer, nor do I play one on TV, so I take that with a grain of salt. But I see no reason why we couldn't just say this is the law in the state of Iowa, because it is.
Right.
So I'll have to maybe I can get Chuck Hurley and we could hash that out, figure that out.
Yeah.
Now, I know that people, as we've said, we're boning up on our apologetics. What are some other ways that we can be involved in this to encourage? I know we're just about to have our summer break for the legislative session, but the next session is going to be coming up before you know it. Also, election time as comes around every fall. So people are going to be talking about their pro-life convictions or not, I guess, on the campaign trail. So what are some ways that we can be mindful as we move forward in some of our leadership and in those types of decisions? If this is on our mind, it should definitely be on the minds of those employees that we send to represent us at the state house or at, even in local races and local leadership as well. I think there's no reason that we can't elect very solid men and women to stand boldly for life on this issue. But what are some ways that we can start engaging in those spheres and be prepared to look ahead for the next few months?
Right. Well, I think one of the things that I always encourage people is, like you said, we need to be praying about this. It needs to be part of our daily prayer, that you're praying for this issue, then you're praying for all the people involved, you're praying for, the organizations, you're praying for the legislators, you're praying for the judges, you're praying, the women, the doctors, everybody. That's first and foremost. And then you need to educate yourself. And that can be done by, tapping into the work that we do at Pulse Life Advocates and other great pro-life organizations across the country, whose goal is to, yes, eliminate abortion, but also change the culture. Because we know that even if Roe does go away and we have the laws, we still have to change hearts. We still have to get to people to change their hearts. And if anything I've seen since this leaked ruling, not only the anger, but just the lack of understanding, even from Christians, that you'd think that would be on your side on this issue concerning life, and they're not. And I think we as a church have failed in a lot of ways. When we hear statistics like 4 in 10 women who've had abortions were attending church services at the time. It's like, that's a big log in our eye as Christians. So I think even looking at that is, where are we as a church? We can't be silent on this issue. And I think not all, because there's some great pastors and great priests out there that have really done well in engaging on this issue. But there's a lot that have been definitely silent on this. And that has led to this apathy, and also just this, really lack of catechesis on what it means to be a Christian. And what does the Bible teach us, and about life and how we raise our children. And I think that's really where groups like ours, who are education and advocacy, are really going to have to step up our game in getting into these churches and to these schools even more so, because yes, we have the laws and they're important, but we still have to be getting in there. And so people need to educate themselves, because we can't do it all by ourselves. It's going to take every single person educating themselves and then engaging that within their own network and within their own community, their own church and school and neighborhood and friend group, to start spreading this message of truth and educating and getting active. Getting active in your local politics, knowing who's running for your school board, for your city council. Even though the abortion issue isn't something they necessarily will be deciding, a lot of those people have aspirations to move up to senators and legislators. So it's very appropriate for you to be asking those people, where is your stance on life?
And frankly speaking, it's a good litmus test, as they say. If you don't stand up for the rights of the most innocent among us and most vulnerable, then that pretty much tells me where you are on standing up for other people's rights as well, my rights too. So that's important to know. Now, Maggie, we've got just a couple of minutes left, and you saw a good new movie that I think our audience would be interested in. It's called Matter of Life. I did actually get a chance to have a quick conversation with Tracy Robinson, who directed the film. So that'll be coming up on a future program too. And what did you think of the movie?
So I was really impressed. I thought it was very, very well done. I went last night, and we had a group that we went and had some cheesecake afterwards and kind of unpacked it. Very good. It really, they did such an amazing job at touching on every single issue on this whole big debate. Talking about, is it really a person, and going through that. Is this just a faith issue? Are you just trying to push your faith beliefs on me, and going through all of that? Graphic pictures, should we be using that? And went through that. Then it had stories of a woman who was assaulted and went through that scenario. Another woman who placed for adoption, went through that whole scenario. Talked about the pregnancy centers out there, and they highlighted Save the Storks and some of these other things, intermixed with what happened with Roe and the whole culture and society that was going on when Roe was passed, and how the people that were involved in that lied to the American people to incentivize them and get them thinking that, yes, we needed to pass this Roe v. Wade. And it was just very, very well done. I'm assuming it will be streamed soon, because it was only on the theater for a couple days. Highly recommend that you watch it. It will be a very good educational piece as you prepare yourself to engage with people on this issue.
And it's called Matter of Life. So watch for that, check that out, and we'll be sure to link to that once it's available online. Maggie DeWitte, it is always just a joy and pleasure to talk with you. I know you're a very busy gal, so and rightly so, because you've got a very important mission. Check out Pulse. the Pulse Life Advocates page at pulseforlife.org. That's pulseforlife.org. Get into the pro-life apologetics tools. Seriously, like look at all of their great scenarios on YouTube that they've created. You can get some really quick, concise, and compelling answers to big and basic questions that we're going to confront and need to confront lovingly in like a minute or less, 2 minutes. So that is a great place to get equipped. Maggie, sister, thank you so much. And I look forward to talking with you soon.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
At FaithWorks Live, we're proud to partner with InnerVisions Healthcare. In unplanned pregnancy and STD situations, they offer help and hope. It's all confidential and it's all free. If women are in a crisis pregnancy situation, they know that they can get real help at InnerVisions. Free pregnancy testing, free STD testing, free ultrasounds as well to see that inner vision. Because women deserve the truth about their bodies, about their baby, about all of their options. And if a woman has gone down the road of seeking abortion through medication and she regrets that decision, InnerVisions also offers abortion pill reversal procedure, which is a life-saving, miraculous option to have right here in our own community. InnerVisions Healthcare, well worth supporting, providing those free services to women in crisis pregnancy. You can call them 24 hours a day at 515-440-2273. That's 515-440-2273. When you love people, you cook them tasty food. And there is no tastier food for my money and for my family than Anonymous beef. And they are so good at what they do. It's naturally raised beef. And in fact, there's several opportunities. You've had to be on a wait list because of how good and how popular their products are. Well, now there's new opportunity right now. Act now to get your Anonymous beef. There's no steroids or antibiotics. It is all natural, farm-raised butcher beef. And you can pay processing at the locker fees. They help walk you through all of the process. It's a little bit different than going to the grocery store, but it is well worth it. You get great value for your money, and they help walk first-time customers through the whole process. Now is the perfect time to provide great quality food for your family, and it just doesn't get better than Anonymous beef. So go to their website and start looking at your order today, whether it's half a cow or freezer full, whatever you need to fit your family, they'll help you out. It's anonymousbeef.com. That's OHNEMUS beef.com.
Special thanks to Maggie DeWitte from Pulse Life Advocates, formerly Iowans for Life. Check them out at pulseforlife.com or on their many social media pages. You'll find them very active on Facebook. And check out the Apologetic series that Maggie just mentioned. Can't wait to see the Matter of Life film as well. We got a chance to catch up with Tracy Robinson. So if you who actually made the film, and Maggie gives it her thumbs up as well. So that'll be another great tool in the toolbox for talking about life, defending life, and really changing hearts and minds. That's a phrase that we've often used perhaps in the pro-life community, but I think there's no more important time than now to really get real about that being the main mission. Because here's the deal. If/when Roe v. Wade is overturned, that will be a wonderful time of celebration. Break out the streamers and the homemade cupcakes or champagne if you're like that. But the truth is that really this is just the beginning. And we've had this conversation a little bit here on this show. We need to be ready like never before to champion the cause of life, because now the battleground, what this does, as you just heard Maggie say, is it changes this war front, the biggest battle in our culture, the biggest war, into like 50 different battles on 50 different fronts. Here in our state of Iowa, there's been one approach that's been taken for basically longer than I've been alive. And I have my own thoughts about that that I have shared here on this microphone. I think we need to get real about why we're fighting for life in Iowa and across the country. We're fighting for life because the preborn child is nothing less than that, a human being worthy of equal consideration under the law, protection and defense under the law, and due process under the law, according to to get constitutional, to put it in the words of the 5th and 14th Amendments. But I think as we look at this and look at which approaches are going to be best for addressing and protecting life, I think there are 5 things that we need to be ready to do like right now. If we're not, I mean, the best time to get ready is always to be prepared is always yesterday, right? But the second best time is right now. And I think number 1 on this list is to develop your pro-life apologetic, to be ready to give an answer with gentleness and respect, but I think with boldness and clarity of conscience, clarity of thought, and great tools to get equipped over at pulseforlife.org. Again, plug them. Because they're good at what they do. And just in 1 or 2 minutes, take some time to check out the videos they have there with common questions that you might hear, like, oh, you guys don't really care about the baby or the mom, you just care about the baby till he or she is born. Right? Well, there's an answer to that. There's a good answer for that. Well, isn't this just a woman's body? You just want to exert control. Pro-lifers just want to exert control over a woman's body. Not true. But do you have an answer for that can be concise, true, bold, loving, all at the same time? Not easy to do, but it is possible. So pro-life apologetics, be prepared to give a defense. That's number 1. Know the questions that are going to be asked. Now is the moment. If you have been silent in the past or kind of lurking, that's what they call it. I guess that's what the kids call it on a social media. If you're a lurker, you're there, but you don't ever say anything. If that's been you, now is the time that we can speak up because the conversation's happening all around us. So no better time than now. But I think second thing, recognize, as I just said, this is just the beginning. The end of Roe is not the main victory, but protecting all of life is. So we don't rest here. We continue to move forward. What's next for your state? My state is Iowa. What about you? What's next for the rest of the nation? And there are many states that do protect or are working on or have in place these trigger mechanisms in their existing law. Many states do not. And then sadly, there are at least 16 states right now that are set to enshrine killing preborn children in their constitutions or firmly in their laws as a state-sanctioned virtue. And that is something that I can hardly think about without crying in frustration. But our nation is now more deeply divided on perhaps than ever before in so many ways. And this is an example of that. A house divided against itself cannot stand. I've heard that somewhere before from a much smarter person than I am. We must have an effective and a bold strategy in place and come together. Everyone who believes in life and is willing to fight for life. We cannot be divided against ourselves, even as our nation is so deeply divided against one another. We have to be pursuing the end of abortion. This is a relentless type of thing. I really believe that this is a no compromise. There's no valuable compromise on, some killing versus all killing. It's just, we have to be pursuing what we truly believe in. For me, that's personhood, which is why we talk about this. I think this is an effective strategy, the legal protection of every life. And that is my third point, that we must unite around our true goal. Every life protected. No more exceptions, no more excuses. And it seems like sometimes we've forgotten that over the last 50 years or so. And I'm not going to throw stones, not when we can use those stones to build a bridge toward a future where we are protecting every single person by law, as they deserve. But let's just say that we can't continue to compromise and expect the results that the other side clearly expects. They brook no compromise. You're either pro now, and now the gloves are off. Right now, the wolf has taken off the sheep's skin and is baring his full teeth. They will not allow compromise on this issue. There's no half measures for the pro-abortion party. Right? You either support open access to abortion, unregulated, anytime whatsoever, why stop at birth, right? The latest attempt in California, it's attempts to enshrine, as well as 15 other states, enshrine this as a virtue in their constitutions or in their state law. Why do we allow for compromise without gain? Incremental gains would be very important. We just have to keep on going. And we fight amongst ourselves over the barest little benefits, the tiniest regulations on abortion or restrictions on abortion. And perhaps there's been some benefit to that, but why do we continue to fight amongst ourselves when we could allow the goal to determine who's on the team, right? So we have to unite around our true goal. Every life protected, no exceptions, no excuses. Anyone that does not fight for that goal is not on our team. So the incremental gains, very important, but we have to be driving towards that goal. What's the goal? Every life protected, no more exceptions, no more excuses. And anyone that sacrifices some lives for the good of others, so that is the exceptions, quote unquote, that tend to be written into legislation, that's not okay. Equivocations that, oh, well, this is better than the alternative. I mean, maybe it is, it depends on the situation, but we cannot continue to introduce these as the answer, because the other side is, they are not going to be suddenly become reasonable. If they're kicking and screaming over any restrictions whatsoever, they're not going to suddenly sit down with you over a pro-life bill and say, okay, well, because you allowed this sentence of language in here, we can come together. They have proven time and time again that they accept no compromise. It is an all or nothing situation, because they are as committed to their darkened and twisted morality as we ought to be for ours. If this is a life and death scenario, if this is truly about nothing less than life and death, we have to have the courage of that conviction, the same level of courage as the leaders of the blue states, the blue cities in red states, who now say, it doesn't matter what my state law says, we're going to allow and protect a killing of children here in our city. So why can't we do that on the other side? Why can't we have sanctuary cities, as they're sometimes called, that protect life? So if you're listening right now and you think my state, my community is conservative, my community is on board with protecting life and helping moms and babies, but my state leaders are not, then create what you can in your local area. Right? Why can't you have a sanctuary city to protect life until that can work its way up into state governance as well? In fact, you can. And check out Personhood Education. So I'll link to that. Their guidance on sanctuary cities. They break down the process and give a really helpful guide on how to go about developing that in your local municipal county level. So great ideas there. What we need most is the courage of our conviction. And I don't care I don't care what they say on the campaign trail or at fundraising season, anyone who's willing to sacrifice some lives for the saving of others is not pro-life. I think we just have to be super clear about that. And we don't have to settle for the pro-life merit badge anymore. We know who's on the team, but we will know them by their fruits. We have to take it seriously. So even when the next legislative push, like the Democrats tried on the federal level, which failed to enshrine abortion in our national policy, as disgusting as that is, Roe 2.0 could come along in the Supreme Court. But we have to be so united in this goal. No more killing. We just say no. That's what we should have done the first time around. But I wasn't around then. When Roe came down the pike, we could have just said no. No, we do not allow killing of babies here, period. Originally and all along, we should have just said no. So that has to be, I believe, our tactic moving forward. We just say no. It doesn't matter how loud you scream and wail and gnash your teeth. You can reserve your own millstone on your own time, right? We do not allow the execution of innocent lives here, period. And if that here is your city, have an impact there at the state level and eventually at the national level. I believe if we are that committed to this goal, that will be our future. Number 4, support pro-life pregnancy centers, as well as the policy engagement side. And that's why you hear I'm so excited and proud every time to partner with great organizations like Pulse for Life, because they're active on all of these fronts, like Intervisions, like Agape, that are pregnancy resource centers working in the trenches, literally. So this is a local effort as much as it is statewide or nationwide. We have to put our money where our mouth is. We have to support and live out our pro-life, like I always say. These are providing the resources, these organizations in your own neighborhoods. That's a way to reach moms in a vulnerable position. And frankly, people who end up, in a panicked situation tend to grasp on to whatever they think might get them out of that situation. We don't need to drive moms to a place where they believe abortion is their only option. And I was so excited to see that our state passed the Moms Bill, which is now law, to provide additional resources to pro-life pregnancy centers to give moms, babies, families the resources that they need to give them a boost, to provide the education, the information that they need, as well as practical support to eliminate the crisis, not the pregnancy. As well as, I think, adoption and foster care. Again, that's a whole show in and of itself, but the church can be and has been marvelous as an advocate for life in the arenas of adoption, promoting adoption, the beauty of life. There are real practical scenarios in which we need to support the lives of children, again, after they're born. And help them. That's only the beginning, right? We could get to that stage. That's the starting line, so that we can develop healthy families again. So proud of the ministries of Embrace Grace at Fort Des Moines Church of Christ, as well as in other churches around the area. I think every church can have an Embrace Grace ministry or something akin to that, to help mentor, to help not only empower moms to choose life, but to help mentor young moms and dads so that they develop a healthy family. From the healthy family comes healthy community. And healthy communities don't kill their kids. It's science, it's truth. So supporting all of those things, living out our pro-life. Number 5 is where we get theological. The end of Roe does not atone for the damage that we've done in the last 50 years. For the children whose lives we have, quote unquote, legally taken. The decimation that has occurred, not just to our population or to our, gross domestic product, future productivity, any of those things. It's unfathomable, as in our human minds cannot even comprehend the millions upon millions of lives that we have taken, that we have violently exterminated, as though they were the problem and not the promise of our future. And that takes its toll on our collective souls. Our sins are many. That doesn't even begin to cover it, because the only thing that can is the blood of Christ. We must confess collectively the sin that abortion has been, the stain that this has put on our souls, without compunction and without any sort of softening of how serious this is. All of us were complicit in the deaths of millions of innocent, precious people, all of us. And that is a burden that is too great to bear for anyone but Christ. As the great Douglas Wilson says, blood guilt requires blood gospel, blood sacrifice. And that is what we find at the cross. It is impossible to wash our hands enough times, Lady Macbeth, to clear our souls of the stain of years and years of state-sanctioned killing of children. But that is not beyond Jesus to forgive. Nothing else can wash away our sins, just his innocent blood. So the innocent blood that's on our hands can only be washed away by his innocent blood shed on the cross. And that atonement can be yours today. It's only through Christ. Blood guilt requires blood gospel. And that is the main thing. That's what it comes down to. Pro-life apologetics, yes. Supporting pro-life pregnancy centers, resources, ministries in our churches. Time for the church to be the church and support life and families and the healthy, joyous flourishing that God always intended for his children. But ultimately, it comes down to the gospel. We must preach the gospel. We must live this gospel. And I can't think of a better way as we wrap up today than to focus on Romans 5. That'll be the verse of the day. Romans 5, starting in verse 6. You see, at the right time, while we were still powerless, Christ died for the ungodly. That's you and me. Very rarely would anyone die for a righteous man, although for a good man, some might possibly dare to die. But God demonstrates his own love in this. While we were still sinners, Christ died for us. As we have now been justified by his blood, how much more shall we be saved from God's wrath through him? For if while we were God's enemies, we were reconciled to him through the death of his son, how much more, having been reconciled, shall we be saved through his life? Thanks for listening to Faith Works Live.